All right. I am joined today with Denise Ferguson. How are you today, Denise?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm glad to meet you for the first time virtually.
And you, and you. It's nice
Yeah.
to see a moving face.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So you live in the UK?
I do.
That is awesome. So tell me a little bit about what you do.
So I am a commercial property surveyor. I have been for about 15 years. And
Mm,
for the past 6 years, I've been specialising in negotiating leases for salon owners. So I'm the
mm.
only commercial property surveyor in the whole of the UK that specialises in it. So
Only one?
the only one.
How is that possible?
I know, it's very specialist because in our industry, largely it's a male industry. It's middle-aged white men
Mm,
who play on the golf course and then do a bit of deals on the side. So they're
mm,
not really interested in the beauty industry. So I have a lot of people in that industry in my life, and I was raised. My mum's best friend was a salon owner when I was a kid,
mm.
and I just, love the industry. And then I had a kind of pivotal moment, as we all do,
Yes.
about 8 years, no, but yeah, about 7, 8 years ago. And I just knew there and then that that's what I needed to do. So I thought,
Mm.
I'm going to niche and I am going to save the industry, change the industry.
Mm. That is really interesting. I was reading a little bit about your bio here. So once I saw that you were in that industry, I was like, okay, cool. So I wonder if she checked out all these shows with like Tabitha Coffee and things like that. Did you see like all those shows that they had on at one point where they were redoing salons and stuff? I don't know if you.
No, that sounds amazing. We don't have anything like that here.
What? Okay, I have to see if I can get this to you because literally it was a show. I forget the name of the show. It was a reality-based show, and literally this amazing hairdresser named Tabitha Coffee. She's Australian, and she would go to these salons and help them make the salon better because they would see like not a lot of clients were coming in, the conditions weren't appropriate, and she's really, let's just say she's not timid when it comes to
Oh, I'll
how
love her
she
then.
would. Yeah, she's amazing. She is straight to the point. She's like, this is disgusting. Like, and I used to love watching that
Honestly,
show.
my head is going, that sounds amazing. I
It
can
is.
do that. I'm going to do that. That's the
I think
that's
you
the
would like
next
it.
thing. My whole team, when they see this, is going to be like, no.
Yeah, not another thing. New project.
No more
Ugh.
project.
So actually, I wanted to ask you a question because you said that, because I like to talk about purpose. So you mentioned that when you were young, is it your mom's friend had a salon?
Yeah, so one of my favorite places to go when I was young, it
Mm,
sounded weird then, but
mm,
it makes perfect sense now, is I used to
mm,
love going to her salon and sweeping the floor. It was like my favorite thing to do
mm,
ever. And then when I was a kid, when I could, even though I had no desire to be a hairdresser at all, when I was a kid, we could do what we call here work experience.
mhm.
And I went to her salon and worked there for a week, and I just like adored it.
So what did you do? You did more like cleanliness, like making sure things were up to par, worked at the front desk or something?
Exactly. Taking bookings, answering the phone, washing hair, sweeping the floors, just,
Hmm,
making tea, just
that is
enjoy
actually pretty cool.
being part of it all. Because even though I come across as quite confident and outgoing, I sometimes can be quite shy in situations. But in that, anywhere where I can people watch, but I don't have to necessarily get involved, I
Yeah.
just adore it. I just love it.
Yeah, being like so you have what I call like that bird's eye mentality where you like to oversee the operation and you can kind of pinpoint like up if you just move this just like that or if you just change this process here, this could be like so huge.
Oh, 100%. I'm like that in business so much. I
That
love
is
getting
awesome.
another thing that I do in business is I have a mastermind, a genius mastermind, we call it, where I get
Mm,
into other people's businesses, and it's nothing to do with salon owners. In fact, we have no salon owners in it at all. But
mm,
I find that the outside view on somebody else's business, it just helps so much because you just pushing them in the right direction, but it's things that they haven't seen themselves because they're too close to it. And I know that because I've been in business for so long that I know in my business when somebody from the outside looks in and says, how about this? And I go, how did I not see that? So it's natural for me to do that.
That's beautiful. So when did you actually, so you did this, well, it says you used to advise the British government on their property portfolio for about 7 years. Tell me a little bit about how that, what is that? Like, explain, like, what? Like, tell me.
Yeah, so I used to go into and run different projects within the government, depending on what was going on. Like sometimes it would be I happened to build a local, be part of the project that was building a local hospital. I was the operations lead there, looking at all of the legal side of it and just making sure that it was all on project. I've renegotiated leases on a cancer hospital, which was where the salon thing all came from. That's a totally different story. I've renegotiated leases in local government portfolios. Lots of different projects, but it's just, advising them and making them lots of money, because our local government or our government in England don't tend to have the right people in the right positions, and they don't pay enough to keep people in those positions, or people that are of the right education to be able to do those jobs. So what tends to happen is they get people like me in and pay them more money, which is ridiculous, to sort everything out. And then once it's all sorted out, they put somebody in and it all goes to mess again. But that's what our government does.
I think everybody's government does that.
So strange.
Yeah, but I think, it could be potentially because it's like sometimes you think that it's a one-time fix. And it's like, oh, we'll just have Denise come in, she'll clean it up, and it's just going to stay like that. You don't realize like it's something you have to maintain.
Yeah, it's like a marriage. If you don't keep on top of that, it's going to go downhill really, really fast.
Exactly. A great analogy there. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I think that's the issue. So tell me about, so you did say it's a male dominated industry. So what is your perception now that you spent so much time in this industry? Like, how are you adapting to that, being the only female? Like, how is that, your experiences there?
Well, it's a lot easier now that I specialize in negotiating leases for salon owners, because salon owners tend to be more female. So that's great, because I'm back in the kind of being able to speak on the same level and not, so much worrying about treading on toes. But when I was advising the government, I used the fact that I was a woman against men every single day. I learned that very, very early on. My mum was a businesswoman, and she, always had to have those male-dominated conversations. And she's a lot nicer than me, a lot more timid than me, a lot sweeter than me. I'm not. I'm very kind of sure of myself and strong-willed, and
you tell it like it is. So you sound like Tabitha.
I very much tell it like it is. But what I used to do back in the day when I was helping the government was I would go down to meet people in the reception for meetings with me, and I would go down, and they would presume that I was the receptionist, and from picking them up at reception to walking to my office would tell me everything.
Sit down.
That would tell me everything I would need to know, because if they kind of gave me attitude, or if they were rude to me, like, I knew. If they were super duper nice, like, that gave me. But there were so many occasions when people would say, while you get a moment, can you go and get me a coffee? And I'd be like, oh, this is going to go well.
Got it.
Especially if there was a guy kind of working with me at the time, and he'd be waiting in my office. They'd be like, oh, great to meet you. And I'd be like, you didn't speak to me like that. Like, you spoke to me like a piece of shit. So I just always used the power that I had against them. And, and you just have to do what you have to do. My dad taught me very early on. My dad has no connection between his brain and his mouth. So he taught me very early on that give everyone the opportunity to do the right thing and always be kind first, because you can never go back if you were rude.
True.
So give everyone that kindness and let them prove themselves to you, but make sure you have a clean slate when you start. If somebody else chooses to be rude back to you, then you get a choice as to how you behave.
I love that. That is very interesting and well said. My brain is wrapping around that right now. And also my podcast clip. No, that's very true. And you know what? That's something I think about, because as I'm learning more about myself and what business means to me and how my show goes and just different things that I'm trying to sort out in my life now, I'm starting to realize that everybody has free will. Everyone. Their perception may be, oh, this person made me and this situation caused this. And I was just, it's an issue with accountability. And I think that that's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. But at the end of the day, you only can control yourself. Yeah. Like there's whatever they do, that's their business. You decide how you're going to show up. That's your decision. And if you want to be like, oh, maybe I should have done that. All right, well, you can't change the past. You know what I mean? But you can absolutely take that information and in the present, you utilize it, or hopefully things work out for you later on in life,
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I think it's life-changing when you realize that every single thing that happens to you in life was controlled by you. It's absolutely life-changing. And the fact that you have a choice on everything just changes everything, because if you're waiting for somebody else to save you, it's never going to happen. If you choose to save yourself, everything is open to you. I have this conversation with my husband and my children all the time, that you choose the way you speak to yourself, because your brain doesn't know the difference between truth or lies. Yes. So if you say to yourself that you are great, you are worthy, you are successful, you are rich, you are kind, you are nice, then you will be what you will be. If you tell yourself you're stupid and ugly and fat and ridiculous and a waste of space, you will be what you will be. So we have to be careful the way we speak to ourselves and the way that we conduct ourselves. And more than that, we have to be careful who we surround ourselves with, because our brain hears what they say too. We don't need to choose to spend time with people that give us negative energy. Yeah. And that took me longer than anything else. In fact,
same.
I spend a lot of time on Clubhouse, and I had a Clubhouse room today about telling the truth, because everyone knows me as a very honest person. Brutally honest person, because I don't have a problem with the truth at all. And I was saying that sometimes it stings, but it was supposed to, because if it stings, it's teaching you something, it's telling you something, and you need to sit with that. But more than that, the thing that we were speaking about was that I didn't understand why people had a problem with the truth, because it's so important to live that truth.
Yeah.
Hard, good, bad, whatever, but it is the truth. If you have a problem with the truth, then you have a problem, and that's something that you need to deal with. And also that knowing that and having done all of that work is ongoing. And I was asked today whether or not it got easier, and I said no. And it never will. It never will, because you always let things slip. It's why your house gets dirty. It's why you put a little bit of weight on. It's why you don't exercise as much as you used to, because you're not keeping yourself accountable. But when you hear those bad things coming in, and when you see your jeans getting tight, and when you find that you're not, you're puffing when you go out on a walk or a hike, then you become accountable again. And you have to keep checking in with yourself on all these different things to make sure that you stay on the right path. But it's every day. It doesn't stop.
Every single day. Oh my God. I feel like you've been like reading my blog or my journal recently. Like everything that you're talking about are the lessons that I've been obtaining, because you know what it was for me, working at a certain employer and leaving abruptly. And all of a sudden I'm like, why is it now that I'm starting to see these things? And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't really spend a lot of time getting to know me. I always spent a lot of time getting to know other people and what they needed and how they behave. And I just kind of operated around that. And the issue with that is I was letting go of my values and my principles and my standards. And then, now I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I think it made me look at myself, because I think, just like how you said with telling the truth, when you tell somebody the truth, whether it's something good or not, usually when you say telling the truth, it's not a good thing, but you're highlighting something that they may have been trying to deal with or are aware of, but maybe didn't think it was offending anybody or whatever. And it may attach to other things like shame and worry and doubt. And when you get into that avenue, it's like, what? How? Now, what does a human do? They deflect. How dare you? Or they try and come up with something just as equal, but you did this. And it's like, I'm not saying it to be going back and forth. I'm saying it because this behavior may or may not have contributed to this outcome. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to like beat you down. I'm trying to, if anything, shed light on something to build you up.
Yeah. I spoke about that as well today, because we need to be careful about everything that we hear. So yes, we should tell our truth to whoever we need to tell it to, and we should be able to receive the truth because we've done that work on ourselves. But we need to be careful about everything that we listen to, because we don't know other people's perception of what their truth is. And what I meant by that was, especially in business, for me, I'm in a growth phase. And so when I'm helping people that are a couple of steps behind me, if they say something to me that's either good or bad, I need to remember that at the stage that they're in now, they're saying it from where they are now.
Yep. So
if they're blowing smoke up my ass, it's because of where they are. And I don't need to listen to that and turn that into something else. It doesn't need to fuel my ego. If they're saying something bad, I also need to accept that they're in the position they're in now, and I don't need to take on the guilt of the fact that I'm moving forward. But while I'm in a growth stage, I'm being pulled up by people who are several steps ahead of me. And I need to remember then that if they're blowing smoke up my ass, it might be because they want something from me. But if they're putting me down, it might be because they don't want me to come up. So always check what you're listening to and what their agenda is. And because there's good and bad in everyone, and whatever stage they're at, they're not necessarily saying something bad because they want to hurt you, or something good because they want to blow smoke up your ass. They're just saying what is their truth on that day. So we always need to be careful about our reactions, because that's all we can control.
Absolutely. And so well said. You just triggered my brain to this book. I don't know if you've read it. Have you ever read the book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz?
No.
This is amazing.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, this is a great book because it talks a little bit about what you're saying right now, about how people show up, even venturing into motive. You know what I mean? People can only provide. It's kind of like the friend. Say you're dating somebody and you're like, you know what, this person did this. Should I break up with them? You know what I mean? They're going to say either yes or no based on their experiences. So if that person had something similar happen to them and that was a trigger for them, they're only able to operate out of that. And they're going to be like, yeah, of course, that's like a red flag. Are you crazy? Don't do that. Don't date this person. But they're answering. They mean well, but they only know what the knowledge they have. So what I like about this book, The 4 Agreements, it says, there's this quote in the book that I will never forget. And it's pretty much the basis of the book. It says, when somebody, whether it's a compliment, somebody is saying something that kind of like takes you down a couple of notches, whatever it is, don't take anything personal. Nothing. No matter what it is. I like your shoes, not personal. Don't take it personal, because when you start to take things personal, it's like you're taking on that energy, and it could either raise you or lower you. And then you could be like attached to that. And then you're looking for somebody else to fuel it. You know what I mean? You have to be an independent entity in a sense. So yeah, like check out that book. It's like really good.
Yeah, I truly believe that you need to be careful about the compliments you accept and the criticism that you accept. Because if you only believe the compliments and are hurt by the criticisms, then you're always going to be fed by your ego. So
yeah,
be really careful about what you let inside.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. How did you, so I'm going to assume experience, but let me ask, how did you get to this point of having this awareness of when I'm hearing communication, values, purpose? What was it for you?
I was raised in an Irish family where everything was shouted at you and everything was emotional and fiery and everything like that. And I built my whole personality on the fact that I'm fiery and emotional and all of those things. And I am still all of those things. And I'm really proud of, where I've come from and everything. I come from a very, poor family, and, my mum worked really hard. My dad too, but, different. She was a young mum, 18, 19 when she had us, and she, went to school while she had us and had an amazing career and everything like that. So it's so different to what my dad went through, because only now, being in business, can I ever appreciate what it must have been like to do all of that all at once as a mother. And then, I kind of lost everything 8 years ago, went through a huge divorce, and my ex-husband went through mental health crisis, and we're really good friends now. But, it was a horrible, horrible time. And, just raising 2 small children, being a single mum and in business and everything. And you just trust everyone and believe everyone and, hang on to everything because you have no money and you're just terrified. And I clawed my way through for years and years and years. And I, trusted and listened to everyone for such a long time. And I was doing that roller coaster of people love me. Oh, people hate me. Oh, people love me. And it was just soul destroying. And I just made a decision, because that's all you can do, that I couldn't live on that roller coaster anymore. And, not that I don't lose my mind all of the time, because I do, I'm still human, but I try to live a much more even life now and work on myself every single day. And that was the changing point for me, that I didn't have to wake up fixed because I wasn't broken. I just have to try and make myself that little bit better every single day. That released the pressure for me, because I'm still allowed to lose my mind when, my children walk up my brand new carpet in muddy boots. I'm still allowed. Yeah, I know. I'm still allowed to, freak out when, my husband decides to take my car to golf for the day when I was supposed to be going to a meeting. I'm still allowed to be human, but I'm allowed to check my responses to everything every day too, and just do that little bit of work. And whether or not it's meditating or exercising or words of affirmations or reading a book or just having some me time, whatever it is I need, I give myself permission to do that now. And I never did that before. I still work way too much. That's something I'm going to have to work on at some point, and I'll work. I work on that every single day.
Yeah.
But I give myself permission now, and I just didn't before.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, there's chaos there, but I think that's the beauty, because through that, that's when the learning begins. It's in those chaotic moments, and you start to, reflect a little bit, and you're like, what could I have done? Or what really happened here? Is it everybody else or is it me? And I think that's like a really awakening moment, because you're like,
oh my God. Yeah. Realizing that every time that I went off like a rocket, which is what everyone says to me, you went off like a rocket. Every time I'd be like, that's because you. And then I'd realize, no. And it wasn't that moment either. It was the 15 steps before where I had lost control already. That's what I didn't realize. And being told that made a huge difference. Like, you didn't lose your mind then. You lost it all of those steps before. Find what that step was and change it there. Don't get to the fact that you've gone off like a rocket. So that really helps now.
Love the way you said that, because that's the thing. Even for me, I used to be, or I'm still working on being that person where something happens and you're like, oh, that bothered me. All right, let's just, maybe they won't do it again. You know, you kind of brush it to the side and it happens again. You're like, nope, not going to say it. I'm just going to chill right here. And then by the third time, you're just off like a rocket. Like that's what my experience was. And you know what? I learned two things out of that, because one, I learned you can voice how you feel. Now, I think the question that I obtained for myself, because that's what I started to do. I started to question myself more to understand my behavior. And I said, well, why do you disregard your feelings? What is that? And I realized that it did come from my upbringing, because, you know, when you have parent-child dynamics, some people, the way that is, it's you have an opinion? You're right. You know what I mean? So when that's disregarded, you know, for me and the way it affected my personality, I disregarded everything. Maybe I'm the one that's crazy. Maybe I'm the one that, you know what? It's my fault. Like I'm the one that's like, oh, blame me. You know, I didn't see it. Even if it was somebody else's job, all my faults, you know? And then when I started to transition now with the knowledge I had, I'm like, wait a minute. No, I don't think this is my fault. Like, let's talk about this. And when I started to realize, like in this scenario where I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. Could you please do this or not do this? And somebody just totally disregards it. Now I'm like, oh, okay. Well, is this somebody that I need to have around me? You know what I mean? I started to now realize that point. Did you have moments like that? Like anything similar?
Yeah, I learned a really good thing, and I can't remember where it came from, but something that stops me with this. One, I've never had a problem saying what I see. That isn't a problem at all. My problem is always people's reaction to the fact that I don't like that. Like, I don't like it when you do it. But the thing I learned was something that I think will really help you, is that they said, don't go over the net. And I visualize now a badminton net or a tennis net or anything, as in, discuss the behavior of what that person did, but don't go beyond that, because your emotions that you attributed to that are your emotions, and that's how you reacted. So now I'll say, please don't wear your shoes upstairs. There is mud on the carpet. I won't say, you have ruined my day by purposefully wearing your shoes upstairs, and now there is mud on the carpet, which you did to make sure that now I have to do more cleaning, and I didn't have time to do that cleaning, and now I'm getting, and la 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 la.
Right.
Talk about what they did,
the behavior,
what they actually did, because you don't know what their emotions were behind it. You may well be right, but you're guessing. So if you talk about specifically what they did, and don't talk about how it made you feel or what emotions you attributed to their act, then you are having a discussion on an even keel. And that, when I can remember it, really, really helps. So I'll talk about the actual activity rather than the, horrible emotions that I attached to it.
I think that is very well said. And that's something that I'm learning and oh my goodness, I am practicing.
But it's automatic for us, isn't it? Because if we've said, stop putting that dish next to the dishwasher, put it in the dishwasher, we then automatically think, you're disrespecting me by doing that. We don't say, the dish is next to the dishwasher again, it's not in it. Why did you do that? Like, we've discussed this before. Is there a reason you're doing that? We are automatically giving the reason as to why they're doing that. It's disrespectful. It's this, it's that. You don't appreciate me. You don't appreciate my time. You don't appreciate my kitchen. You don't appreciate my cleaning. When in their heads, they're like, I don't even remember doing it. But, now you're telling me that I'm a bad person because of it. And it's just, and it goes too far. We're pushing it over the net. And it's like, right, okay.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I'm gonna keep that visual in my head.
That helps me too. I
Yeah.
literally think of a
The
net. I'm like,
net.
don't push it over that net.
Yeah.
It wasn't over the net. It was an activity. Talk about the activity,
Right.
but only when I remember to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that is very well said. And that's why I'm like, I think you've been reading my like journal
Yeah.
like recently.
Yeah. I have, and you really shouldn't have done that last week.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God. But you know what? I think that's the beauty of learning about who you are and the beauty about learning about communication and stuff, because now there's somebody that said like oh man, I don't remember the quote, but she said, the more you start to like learn these, oh my goodness, where'd she go? Hold on, let's see if we can get her back. There she is.
Oh, it
There
went
you
off.
are.
Sorry, it turned off.
I looked up and I was like, I was like, why is it only me? But yeah, I like these moments because you start to learn how to dance like with your ego in a sense, because you start to laugh at it more. You're like, this is what I was thinking. That's actually pretty funny. You know what I mean? You don't take things so seriously anymore. You might have like that moment, but I think the moments get shorter now instead of like maybe like a day.
I think the hardest thing for my family was always that I had such an emotional reaction to everything they did, or everything that I felt they did to me.
Mm.
But to the outside world, their opinions of me and their things that they do to me never mattered. So it was obviously so deep in me that my family and everyone matter and nobody else does. And for them to view that of me, especially now I'm in the public eye a lot more, and I'm much more visible because of my business. And I would talk about it so often, like other people whose opinions don't matter to me, and they'd be sitting there going, well, mine yesterday did. And that change, that really helped me a lot too, because they were right. Like, I don't care about what other people's opinions of me are. So why was I attributing not putting something in the washing machine as, a complete slight on my personality, when I didn't attribute somebody calling me, a horrible mother in the public eye as being a slight on my personality, because it was too close, it was too emotional. So now that I can say, your reactions aren't to hurt me, and I need to realize that and really have that conversation with myself before I let it come out of my mouth, that really helps.
Absolutely. Something you said there, because like even in like whether it's an interview or discussion or so, I think sometimes people feel the need to respond right away. Like I have to have an answer. Like I have to say something right now. And it's like you can think about it. It's okay to think about it.
You
and
should think about it.
Yeah, you should. That's a better way to say it. You should absolutely think about it, because I like that, because it, I think, I don't know if you've heard of her, Brene Brown.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, yeah. So you listen to her show?
That I don't actually, but that is a woman who has a very good, healthy connection between her brain and her mouth. Yeah. And she uses the adage of 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use it appropriately. And I think that's that is a game changer too. If more people realize that they need to shut their mouth and open their ears, because I used to be that person that would react straight away.
Right.
I listen way more now.
Yeah, because the listening part is where we need to spend our time to really understand and not just hear, I guess would be the difference. And there was something she said that it kind of made me think about, but it escaped me. But I like reading her books and like understanding it, and I think that helped me to, when you think you've reached a level, like you're like, oh, like my communication skills, like we're good here, like we're good listening, all right, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, there's more levels up here. Like it's like endless. But I love her content because it really helps you understand that listening is like, I don't even know if you want to say it's an art. How would you perceive listening? Would you perceive it that way?
I think communication as a whole is an art. And I think somebody in Brene Brown's life will be sitting there going, this person you see in the public eye isn't the person that I get to have, because we can't all be perfect all the time. And she's a human being that's trying her best. I think the worst thing that people try to do is be perfect. I think everyone should allow people to make mistakes, because that's just not, it's frowned upon way too much. Mistakes is where we learn to be human beings and learn to be kind. So all of that shit needs to be cut out really, really quickly. Yeah. But, you know, I think communication is an art, and I think people are raised people can be raised in an environment where communication is key, and others where it is absolutely not. And it doesn't matter if you're, 15, 40, 60, you might not have got there yet, because the pivotal moments in your life, or the learning moments where you learn to have those connections in your brain, is up until 7 years old, between 18 months and 7 years old. If you've spent that time in a family environment where communication isn't great, you are going to struggle, and you could never get there. But if it's important to you and you work on it every single day, it's an absolute art form. Art form. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're no good at the written word, because I'm not the best at the written word. There are now technology that will help you. You can record it, it'll type it out. That's brilliant. You can do videos so people can see your personality. You can do podcasts. You can, there's a million different ways of communication now, but the biggest part of communication is listening, not talking.
Absolutely. 110%. And I think that's the thing there, because, with listening, all the things that we kind of discussed thus far, like I used to dive into those emotions, like this person, you're doing this and it affected my communication, because I'm not listening if I'm already creating an idea, a picture, a vision. I'm not present. You know what I mean? And I think
you were having an argument with somebody and you hadn't sent them the script. That's what was happening.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and start seeing, and it's just like, what?
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah. It's those discussions that we have with ourselves in the shower every morning, where we're like, and he said this, and I said that, he said this, and I'm going to tell him when I see him. And then you see them and they're like, you're not saying what I thought you were going to say. Why didn't you have the script? And it's because you had that argument with yourself and they weren't party to it. So
right. It's so interesting. Like so interesting. That's why I'm so glad that you're on the show today, because I think I mentioned to you about, I don't know, maybe I didn't, but I'm starting another podcast as well, focus a little bit more on business and focus on that communication, because I think sometimes in the business world, we can get into the habit of doing and missions and accomplishments, and there are these little moments that happen, and sometimes they turn into big moments where there's a miscommunication, and we end up, causing a disruption in the space. It's not on purpose, it's based on the skills that we have at that time. But I think in the business world, we can absolutely become better communicators. So I guess my question to you on that is, what are your practices in business? How do you help the people that you work with in that sense?
So the people who work for me, how I navigate communication, because I know that we all have different communication skills, is that if something isn't going right, I presume that I haven't communicated it correctly. I am responsible for everything that goes wrong in my business. So the thing that I do all the time is say, I've not communicated this properly. Can you tell me how I can improve myself? And let them give me the feedback, because it doesn't matter how many times I have to say it. They've clearly not heard it the way that I heard it. And that's my issue, not theirs. So I need to learn their communication skills. So that's how I do it in my business. But in terms of my clients coming to me, what I do is I have an onboarding process, which is really, really holistic. I get to know every part of their personality, their business, their family life, everything. I really, really grill them. And some of them are like, whoa, I'm a salon owner. What's this got to do with anything? But it's really important for me to understand every dynamic of their life, because it is almost like going through labor when you go through opening up a salon or negotiating a lease, because you know, we need to have the flexibility that they need within their lease so that they can fulfill their dreams. But if I don't know what their dreams are and they don't communicate that with me, I won't be able to get that for them. So having that free-flowing communication really gets it all out of them. And especially when I know their family dynamics and their desires for their business and their children's ages and personalities and everything like that, when they start to freak out and say, oh, you know, I'll just, you know, sign anything, I just need to open the salon, I'll say, I know you, Sue, and I know that isn't what you want. Calm down. Everything will be okay in the end. If I didn't have that relationship with them, I wouldn't be able to have that conversation with them. So people don't get it at first because it's not anything that they've ever experienced before.
Right.
No other surveyor does anything like this. No solicitor gives them this sort of, you know, service. But there's no other way I can do it because I know how personal it is.
Yes.
If you want to grab something off the shelf and sign it, you don't need any of this, but you won't get what you need for your business. So communication with me is really, really important. And I, you know, because I do my podcast and I kind of know how to have these conversations and kind of interview people, but it's more of a conversation for me. I just do leading conversations, leading questions, and I let them go. And when they stop going, then I'll do another one and let them go. And I let them, you know, give me all of the information in the natural way that they're comfortable.
Oh man, that's like unheard of. That is amazing. And I, you know, I presume that's what makes you so exceptional and so rare, because I mean, you're a woman, but then also you're so personal. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
I don't know how anyone else can do it any other way other than to not get it right, not get it. I mean, obviously there's going to be, if somebody's whole life changed the day after they signed that lease, then, you know, there's not a lot you can do about that. But if you don't try, it's always going to be wrong.
Right. Oh my goodness. Jeez, Denise, where you been? Oh my God. Like, oh my God. Like, you know what it is? Oh man, do you do speaking engagements, Denise? Like, where are you hiding?
I know. Yeah, it's in the plans, but I'm so busy at the minute that no. And plus we can't do anything at the minute anyway. So.
Oh, you better make it digital. Like virtual meetups, because you have so much like that. Like, that's not something that somebody could just like out the gate just like do. This is time. I could tell there's much time. Everything
I am is all of the mistakes I've made in life. And I'll make more and I'll be wrong and I'll screw things up. But I don't now. The thing that I say, and I say it to everybody, is you can wallow, you're just not allowed to move there. Yeah. And that's what I live by now. I have times when, you know, something massive's just happened in my family and I was so sad and it really kind of took a hold of me, but it didn't stop me, and it would have before. It would have floored me and I wouldn't have been able to do anything. It would have been bed for days. Not that I'm a depressive person, but it was a biggie. And it didn't, because I had that in me of, you're allowed to wallow, but you're not allowed to move in here, because it wouldn't have helped my mum who's ill. So there was no point. And because I knew that, and I'd accepted that, because I've had the experience of all of the other times where my life has been destroyed, I knew then that it isn't over. Like, feel the feelings. And that's part of it too. The reason I get through all these things way faster now is because I allow myself to feel. I didn't before. I was like, you are a strong woman. You must get on with it. And then I would break because I didn't allow myself to have any downtime. And even now, my husband will say to me all of the time, well, I didn't know, because you're such a strong woman. So even that I need to work on, because I need to allow people to see me as vulnerable, and I've never been able to do that.
I think that's the key. I had to work on changing the way I spoke with myself, because I would do that too. Like, what are you kidding me? Like, you weren't raised like this. You got to be strong, always on, all the time, no mistakes, perfect. Like, you're Barbie. Like, just be Barbie. And then when I realized that, oh my goodness, I'm subtracting the very thing that makes me me, which is I have bad days, I have good days, and maybe sometimes I'm on and sometimes I'm off. Like, that's me being human. Otherwise, I'm just an android. You know what I mean? So, I had to realize that. And through my show, I started to, like, from the beginning of my show, where I started 5 years ago till now, I'm like, wow, like, oh, like, okay, I am supposed to feel these things. And I even tell myself, like, hey, Stace, like, what's going on? Like, what are you
Yeah.
feeling right now? Like, and I'm like, feel this or feel that. And I'm like, all right, that's okay. Like, I'm actually talking nicer to myself. And I realized how important that was, because when I did the opposite, it's like the rage continued and it traveled into everything I did. And what eventually it did for me, or the way I held it, it would disconnect me from my creativity, because I wasn't connecting with my emotions. Did you have this experience?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think every emotion is valid. If you
Mm-hmm.
think about those times when you can, rip a door off of a building because there's a baby inside and it's burning down, anger is important. If you
Mm-hmm.
think about the times when, you are so frustrated by, something that's happened in your life and it needs to fall out of your eyes and out of your mouth, that releases that energy. So all emotions are important. And if you allow yourself to say that feeling happy is the only valid emotion, or crying is the only way that you can be upset, or then you are dampening down so much of your personality, and that cannot be a healthy way to live. So if you work on it all the time, there's always going to be nooks in it where you're like, oh, I'm still not allowing myself to be weak, or I'm still not allowing myself to be strong, or whatever it is that it is in your personality. You're going to continue to have those. But if you're actively, like everything we've said so far, if you're actively trying to work on that, it's just a beautiful place to live.
Yeah, it starts to free you. It's like you didn't even realize that you had the chains on.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, like, oh my God, like, I'm this. Like, I have some great qualities. Like, I'm not this horrible person. Or, there are other people. And I think also that's what creates the connection between different humans, because it's like, oh, I go through that too. Like, I'm not alone.
Yeah. I think as humans, we tend to feel completely alone in our emotions, in our journey in life, because no two people experience things in the same way. And you could be sitting there, like, if you have any brothers or sisters. Me and my sister, we were raised in the same house by the same parents, and we have completely different childhoods, completely different ways that we raise our children, completely different outlooks on life, because we are completely different people who've gone completely different paths. Nature, nurture, choice, what is it? But you can't tar somebody with one brush and expect them to stay that color, because it just doesn't work that way. Absolutely. You have to allow them to grow and progress. And and that's another thing that we didn't, talk about this time, but it's definitely important for people to hear, is that when you say to somebody you've changed, don't mean that it's a bad thing, because people should continue to change.
Absolutely. 110%. I mean, I think, like, for me, I love seeing people change their behavior, especially if it's something that's serving to them, where they realize, like, oh my God, like, I could do this. Like, I'm just like, yes, you can, I think experiences can change us, and sometimes it could be for great things and sometimes not so great things. But at the end of the day, I think everybody has the ability to change. And even if it is a not so great moment, maybe that person needs to go through it.
Yeah.
That's something I had to realize too. Did you capture that in your life experiences, that sometimes people have to go through that moment where I guess you're trying to be like, hey, don't do it, but it's like, oh, you have to.
Yeah. Me and my ex-husband talk about this all the time because, you know, he's one of my biggest supporters. I'm really incredibly lucky to have each other in our lives because the romantic love may have completely and utterly gone, but the love for each other is stayed, and it's so good that we get to raise our children together. And he's got another baby now, and I get to have squeezes with that, and then send it back. But we always have the conversation of there is no way I would be where I am now if I was still with him. And the breakup was heartbreaking, and it really destroyed all of our family for, you know, a long, long time. And none of it was healthy at the time or great or productive or anything like that. But now it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I come from a huge Irish family. We'd never had a divorce in our family at all. And I'd been living in an emotionally and financially abusive relationship for years. And he was a lovely guy to the outside world, but he was going through a breakdown, and he was breaking and breaking and breaking. And he couldn't admit it to anyone else. He couldn't admit it to himself. So he just destroyed our lives inside the home. But because I was that strong woman, how was I supposed to tell anyone what was happening behind closed doors? Right. So for him to self-destruct and take our lives, our money, you know, there was affairs, there was, you know, violence, not towards me, but there was violence involved. You know, it was, everything happened. It was awful. But if it hadn't have happened, I would still be in that relationship because nobody had ever got a divorce in my family. I mean, now I've opened the gates and loads of them have got divorces. But at that time, I would never have left.
Right, you know, because for you or you know, how do I say this? It's like there's certain things that we are willing to stick with and not. And it maybe had to be that. Just like you're saying, it had to be that for you to get away. I've been in that.
Yeah.
Not like that, but similar. Yeah.
Yeah. It's as if, you know, especially now when I hear about women who are in abusive relationships and, you know, why didn't you get out? Why didn't you do this? You can't ever tell a woman or a man, you know, regardless, a person in an abusive situation, you can't tell them what the thing will be that will get them out. It could be tiny or it could be huge, right? But they won't know until they know. I didn't know what it would be until I knew. Yeah. But for me, it had to be huge. It had to be self-destruction. But it was the making of me because I was that strong, fiery, emotional woman. He knew that I would kill him. He knew it. He knew that I would be responsible for the destruction of his life and that I would take him down and I would never forgive him and everything like that. But he was wrong. Because I don't know what it was. I don't know what happened. I don't know how it happened. But something in me from very, very early into our journey of separation and divorce told me to love him anyway. Never, ever take him back. Never. But I don't know if I say it was the children. I don't know what it was. But I knew then and there that I would never be responsible for destroying him, ever. I wouldn't let anyone say anything bad to him. I made sure he was always happy, healthy, and comfortable, whether or not he was in a crisis center or whether or not it was financially or whether or not he came to stay with us. Whatever it was he needed, he got. And he tested that for years. And there was one day he turned around and he said to me, "You're never going to argue with me, are you?" And I said, "No." And that changed. That was it. We've never, I mean, you know, we're like brother and sister now. So we kind
little moments.
we bicker, but I don't know what it was, but something told me to just love him anyway. And I mean, I can't imagine anything romantic towards us at all. but he's like a brother to me now. And I just knew there and then to just stick by him and it would all be right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's major. I think
Yeah.
there are those moments in our lives that come up, and I don't know what that is either, but there's that it's a moment. It's a moment, and it's like a split like second, like it just happens, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. It's happened in my life too, where I was with someone, and my issue is that, you know, being gay and being in these relationships and what I was around, I thought that it was normal to be in relationships that were dysfunctional. I thought that's just how it's supposed to be. You have two women. It's just going to be ridiculous. It's just supposed to be, you're supposed to be off and on. There's never going to be any stability, because that's what's happening around me. And each time when I was in these relationships, or I'll say for the most recent one, when I left that one, it was, I cared for them and loved them, but that was my problem. I would put all my love into somebody and leave nothing for myself. And eventually it was like, almost like I was living for them and trying to fix them and help them. And eventually it was when I saw their behavior in a moment where I was like it was that moment where I realized, oh, this is never going to be what I need or want. Like, never. And it had to happen that way, because what it was is just like every time around this person's birthday, there was a certain behavior where they were like flirty to someone else or interacting with them intimately. And I'm like, I do monogamy. I don't do, so it had to happen again. Like it was like the same thing happened. Different people, same thing. And I'm like, I was like, no. And I just left. Everybody, where are you going? I didn't even say a word. No argument. No, how dare you? No, I got it. Got the message.
Yeah.
Split second.
Sometimes you have to believe what people tell you they think of you the first time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we don't.
Yeah. Sorry, go for it. Yeah.
We allow ourselves to be treated the way that we allow ourselves to be treated. And that's the thing, I have that conversation with my children all the time. They're teenagers and they have friends that are good and bad influences on them. And my children are good and bad influences on their friends. And I will say to them all the time that, your friends are treating you the way you allow them to treat you. Like I like to say to people that people don't tend to come to me with bullshit, because I don't allow bullshit. Like if there's drama happening around me, I know that I'm off center somewhere, because usually people don't even try.
Yep. Because you created that foundation already, or what is okay behavior and what is not okay. And when it happens, you probably address it immediately.
Yeah.
That's
and
amazing.
I know that if I haven't, like something recent happened with a project that I was working on, and it was a project I didn't want to do. I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was doing it to help a friend who also had mental health issues. So I think that it was a whole throwback from my ex-husband. I knew all along that it wasn't right for me. And in the end, it went to shit. And I'm the only one to blame, because I knew that that's what it was going to do for me. And that project might have been great for them if I hadn't got involved in it. But it went to shit because I knew that it was never going to be what I needed. In business, for me, you all work hard, you all have, plans, and you all do what you're supposed to do. I don't do any of the fluff and any of that. I don't want excuses. Just do it. So I should never have got involved. And that was and I let that drama happen because I was in a situation I shouldn't have been in. I got into something that I knew wasn't for me. And I just need to remember that. Stay in your lane. Yeah. Don't get into somebody else's lane.
Oh my goodness, Denise. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. you triggered my brain to that. I don't know if you have looked into like any quotes by like Eleanor Roosevelt.
See them about.
Yeah. Every once in a while. Yeah. So the quote that you provoked my brain to, she said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And that kind of triggered my brain in that sense, because that's something I had to write on a Post-it note and keep by my bed and just read it. Read it. Like, if you're disrespected or things like, if you feel like that, you don't address it. You just agreed. You know what I mean? You just agreed. You're allowing this behavior to happen. And man, it really shows how much responsibility you have for yourself. Like, for you and your foundation and your beliefs and your values. And once you start to allow certain things, and especially if you have other witnesses around, then they start acting like that. You gotta do something about it. Got to do something about it. But yeah, so tell us where, because we're at this hour now, and I'm like, you know what, I think what was said. But do you have any other things that you wanted to share about your business or about what we discussed today?
No, I think we've gone through all of the realms of business and communication and everything. I think this has been an amazing podcast. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. You man, this is probably one of the best because of, how you speak and how you convey with conviction and belief, and your tone as well, which I love voices. That's like my little nerdy thing. Like, I'm like, tone, cadence. All right. Okay. So I really appreciate that about you. But I think we got to do another podcast on maybe another show or so. I'll mention to you after we get off of here, more in the business end, because I love how you bring the years of experience that you've had in different dynamics of your life into your business. And to me, I don't see any other way of doing business without that.
No, I don't either. I don't know how you can separate who you are from what you do at all. I think it's fundamental to business that you show up 100% authentically as you are, and that's one of the best things I've ever kind of given myself permission to do too. I don't try to be, this, uber professional, softly spoken, business woman at all. I am,
right.
100% me all the time.
Absolutely. And that's how you should be. I'm actually putting your website up here. Yay. For people to visit you, because I was actually just looking a little bit. I didn't even get to really absorb everything. I was actually going to go down the avenue of more like salon-based stuff, but I love where this show went. I think you made some really good points. And I think at the end of the day, for any business, it's so important to have the communication, listening, and also making sure that your team knows what's going on, what is happening, but also not just having one-way communication, also having the employee be able to speak with you as well and not feel afraid to say anything.
Yeah. That free-flowing communication is absolutely vital. Yeah. Otherwise, you might as well just answer for them.
Yeah. It's so huge. But I really hope to see you do a speaking engagement. Like, you would be amazing at these things.
I will. I definitely will.
Yeah, like, you gotta like bring your podcast on the road or something. Like,
oh my god, can you imagine? That'd be great, because right? I get to drink anyway. So
yeah. I think I was looking at your Facebook, and was it your Facebook that it said like one job? It said like, I have to drink to do this or something.
I know, so good. My podcast is called I'm Not Doing This Without Alcohol. It's great. Sit there drinking gin, talking to people. Perfect.
Oh my goodness. I have to listen to your show. I see it's on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Oh my goodness. Denise, thank you so much for being here.
Anytime, honey.
Oh my goodness. You know what? It's so funny. I forgot to put my like intro on. So I'm going to put the outro on and people will catch that, and then we'll talk for a few minutes after.
Awesome.
Thank you so much again.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.